First, meet Chad, the guy who turned porta-potties into $1 million business. You had the kind of job people fight for. Procter & Gamble. Big brand, bigger salary. You wore button-downs, used words like Q4 targets, and never had to explain your job to your in-laws. Your parents bragged. Your LinkedIn glowed. And yet, every Monday morning felt like waking up inside a beige spreadsheet. Because you weren't building anything. You were packaging, polishing, making slightly different soap look innovative. Every meeting was a new flavor of the same thing. Laundry detergent with a cleaner clean. Shampoo with botanical refresh. Toothpaste with micro-whitening action. You knew the slogans by heart and hated yourself for it. Then came the construction shoot. It was supposed to be a standard branding campaign. Dusty boots. Hard hats. Blue-collar charm. You pulled into the job site in a company SUV, grabbed your tablet, and scanned the scene. And then you had to pee. You walked toward the only option, a plastic porta-potty, sun-baked and humming with flies. You opened the door, and dry heaved. The smell hit you like a memory of everything society pretends not to see. But that wasn't the moment that changed you. It came seconds later, when you stepped out, holding your breath, and noticed the line. 5 men, waiting. Quiet. Tired. No shade. No water. No choice. And behind them, a makeshift break area with a sign duct-taped to a cooler. Do not use toilet unless you have to. That was it. That was the moment. Not dramatic. Not poetic. Just one sentence in your head. This is broken. And no one's fixing it. You drove home that day with the window down and the air thick with something else. Resolve. You didn't quit immediately. First came the research. You learned about the sanitation industry, the monopolies, the profit margins, the total lack of innovation. It was a race to the bottom. And no one cared, because it all smelled the same. You went back to work the next morning and looked around. Everywhere you turned, people were pretending. Pretending that metrics mattered. Pretending that banner ads sold shampoo. Pretending that rebranding dryer sheets was a legacy. You closed your laptop in the middle of a team sync. Your Slack status read, in a meeting. But in your head, you were already gone. You were done selling clean. You wanted to go clean the dirty and make it better. You told your wife that night. She was 6 months pregnant. You had $18,400 in student loans. $19,212 in your checking account. Your runway was 87 days, until rent, diapers, and reality crushed you. She stared at you like you'd said you wanted to become a clown. Toilets, she asked. Like actual *T? You nodded. But luxury toilets, you added, for people who never thought that was an option. She paused. Then she exhaled, slow, heavy, full of hope and fear, and said the words that would define the rest of your life. If you're gonna do this, do it right. You sketched your first prototype on a legal pad at 2 a.m. Not a plastic box. Not something blue. You wanted brushed steel. Ventilation. Soft lighting. Eucalyptus scent. Bluetooth music. Soap that actually lathered. You called it halftime rentals, because in the middle of chaos, people deserve a break. You built it out of a 16-foot trailer, outfitted it with everything you could afford, and parked it in your driveway. Your neighbors thought it was a food truck. Your friends thought you'd lost it. One of them joked, "From PNG to P&Go." But you weren't listening to jokes anymore. You were too busy cold emailing wedding planners. The 11th one responded. "If you can deliver what your pictures promise," she wrote, "I'll book 2 for July." You stared at that email like it was a signed check. Then you got to work. You called electricians, ordered tanks, designed signage, learned plumbing, learned YouTube plumbing. You found out what it costs to dispose of waste legally. You built a maintenance protocol from scratch. You ordered your first branded hand soap with a tagline, "This is not a porta-potty." Because it wasn't. It was your first asset. Your first shot at control. Your first chance to own something no one else wanted. That first event was an outdoor wedding. Hot, dusty, perfect for disaster. You parked your trailer between two oaks and wiped everything down twice. You placed tiny folded towels next to the sink. The bride came out of your trailer grinning. "That felt like a spa," she said. "My mom wants to take pictures in there." You smiled. Not because of the compliment, but because you knew you'd just crossed a line. This wasn't an experiment anymore. This was real. You cleaned the unit yourself that night. It wasn't glamorous, but it was profitable. You'd made more in that weekend than you used to make in a week. And not from tech. Not from NFTs. Not from equity. From toilets. From the thing no one wants to build. The thing America needs but doesn't want to talk about. Everyone uses it. No one respects it. That's not just a toilet. That's a mirror. You started targeting job sites next. Real estate developers. Labor unions. You offered discounted rates for first-time clients. You walked into break rooms with flyers and said, "I don't rent bathrooms. I sell dignity." They didn't laugh, because they knew what those men dealt with. And when you gave them a demo, they booked on the spot. 8 months later, you sat in your truck, watching 3 of your trailers glow blue in the dark, booked solid for the next 4 weekends. You opened your QuickBooks and stared at the number. $1,203,880 in gross revenue. All from something no one wanted to touch. You took a sip of gas station coffee and smiled. Because this wasn't a fluke. It was a system. Clean, repeatable, scalable, and most importantly, yours. You used to write marketing copy for products you didn't use. Now you design every inch of an experience people remember. You used to craft brand personas in a deck. Now you shake hands with real customers on real ground. And every time you spray down a toilet yourself, you think, this is still cleaner than corporate politics. You didn't build an app. You didn't go viral. You didn't raise venture capital. You just saw something broken and decided not to look away. You turned waste into wealth. You turned disgust into design. You turned flushing into freedom. And now you're just getting started. 1 trailer down. 1,000 more to go. You weren't supposed to be here. Not in this trailer. Not with your name on a cleaning schedule. Not negotiating dump station permits at 7 a.m. with a clipboard in one hand and a bleach sprayer in the other. But this was the cost of ownership. And you were all in. After the first wedding, things didn't explode. They unfolded, quietly, strategically. One job led to a DM. One DM led to a call. And then came the message from Madison, the wedding planner who worked only with 6-figure couples. "I saw your trailer in a TikTok," she wrote. "If it's really that nice, I want 2 units for July. VIP wedding. No plastic boxes." You didn't blink. You just said yes, and started building. Because the truth was, you only had 1 trailer. And a handful of invoices. But this wasn't about what you had. It was about what you were becoming. You took a loan from a family friend, $30K with no interest, just a handshake, and turned your garage into a mini production site. You designed every inch of the second unit better than the first. A wider door. A softer lighting. A touchless sink. A custom scent diffuser that mixed peppermint and eucalyptus. You didn't want to just beat the competition. You wanted to make them irrelevant. The second trailer finished just 2 weeks before the wedding. You polished it until you could see your reflection in the floor. And that night, when you saw the mother of the bride walk out of your unit holding a glass of champagne, laughing, you knew. You weren't in the toilet business. You were in the dignity business. That mindset changed everything. You started to ask, where else are people treated like crap? And just accept it. Answer, construction. You remembered that job site. The one where it all began. So you picked up the phone and called them. "Hi. This is Chad from Halftime Rentals. I build portable restroom trailers, designed for actual humans." Pause. Then, what the hell does that mean? You drove over. Brought cold drinks for the crew. Gave the foreman a walkthrough. He booked 2 trailers on the spot. Word spread faster than you expected. Within 3 months, you'd signed 6 construction sites, 2 local festivals, a 1-destination wedding in Asheville with a champagne budget and 0 tolerance for blue boxes. You were moving. And suddenly, it wasn't just about what you built. It was about who you needed. You couldn't keep doing everything. So you hired your first driver, Darren. Ex-Army, dependable, never late. Then you brought on Vanessa, your first cleaning tech. She had a background in hospitality. Treated every trailer like a 5-star hotel suite. Then, your wild card, Lily. 23. Digital native. Smart mouth. Knew how to grow on Instagram and made your trailers trend under #EventLuxury. Now you had a team. A small one, but real. And for the first time in your life, your job was not about performing. It was about empowering. You weren't holding up some brand's legacy. You were building your own. And that meant designing everything. From how a latch clicked, to how a customer felt in the first 3 seconds of stepping inside. It meant showing up early, staying late, doing the jobs no one sees, because those are the ones that make everything else look effortless. But success doesn't always feel like success. By month 5, you'd cleared $480,000 in revenue, more than your old corporate salary. You had 3 trailers on the road, a baby at home, and a wait list stretching into next season. And still, some nights, lying awake between bottle feedings and tax spreadsheets, you caught yourself wondering, am I just playing dress up in a business costume? Imposter syndrome doesn't care how much you're earning. It feeds on how different your life looks from everyone around you. Your old coworkers were still posting about Can Awards and thought leadership. You were pressure washing urine at dawn. But you knew the difference. They sold prestige. You sold peace of mind. And peace paid better. One morning, you got a call at 5:42 a.m. Construction manager. Emergency. Trailer got hit by a forklift, he said. Can you replace it today? You were supposed to sleep in. Your daughter was 9 days old. But you looked at your wife. She just nodded. You drove 90 minutes in the dark. Hooked up the backup trailer. Cleaned it yourself with gloves and a flashlight. By 8 a.m., the site was operational. That day, the manager gave you a handshake and said, I've never seen a vendor move like that. Ever. You nodded, but inside you were thinking, I'm not a vendor. I'm the guy who gives a damn. You started documenting the chaos. 2 trailers stood parked between excavators and cement trucks. Inside, essential oils. Outside, jackhammers. Inside, jazz. Outside, dust and diesel. That was the brand. That was the model. Luxury in a war zone. And people noticed. Your Instagram blew up. Event planners called you the bathroom whisperer. TikTok clips of your LED restrooms hit 200K views. You weren't trying to go viral. You were just solving the worst part of every outdoor event and making it unforgettable. The numbers told the rest. Month 1, $12,000. Month 2, $32,000. Month 3, $64,000. Month 6, $480,000. Month 8, $1.2 million. You didn't raise money. You didn't do pitch decks. You didn't ask anyone's permission. You just built. Trailer by trailer. Booking by booking. Flush by flush. By then, you were running 3 teams. Working 6 days a week. Training cleaners, hiring drivers, optimizing routes. You weren't scaling fast. You were scaling clean. You'd created something rare in America. A dirty business. Run with precision. And as you looked at your growing whiteboard of bookings, you smiled. Because this wasn't luck. It was a system. It was proof. Proof that you could take something society looks down on and make it look up at you. You used to sell soap. Now you sell the right to feel clean, even in the messiest parts of life. That's the business you're in. Not waste. Not water. Not rentals. Dignity. Delivered. And by month 8, you knew. You didn't just build a service. You built a mirror. To show people what they'd ignored. To show yourself what was possible. You scaled sh*T and made it shine. Now, it's time to scale yourself. They started calling you the toilet boss. You didn't flinch. You didn't correct them. You owned it. Because you knew what they didn't. Titles don't make you rich. Problems do. And the bigger the problem, the fewer the takers. You weren't in a sexy space. You weren't pitching on Shark Tank or promising to revolutionize anything. You just cleaned toilets, better than anyone else. And somehow, in this ignored, underestimated corner of the economy, you built something unstoppable. By now, you could spot the pattern. You'd met the bride who cried when she saw your restroom was nicer than her hotel suite. You'd watched a foreman tear up because his crew finally got a bathroom that didn't smell like punishment. You'd listened to parents say, "It's the first time I felt safe changing my kid outside our house." This wasn't just about facilities. This was about restoring something deeper. Respect. In a country obsessed with innovation, you found freedom not by chasing the next big thing, but by making the forgotten thing better. A SaaS founder once told you it took him 2 years to hit $1 million. You smiled politely. You'd done it in 8 months, by hauling waste. And your margins, cleaner than your floors. Because you weren't scaling code. You were scaling systems that moved in the real world. Every trailer taught you more. Where traffic jams ruin service windows. Which neighborhoods need extra water tanks. Why you need a backup generator when weddings go late. Each toilet was its own MBA. In logistics. In brand experience. In how America actually functions behind the curtain. And you mastered it. Because you were willing to do what others wouldn't. Your hiring board expanded. You brought in 2 more drivers, a full-time maintenance tech, a part-time plumber, a customer experience lead named Rochelle, who used to run a boutique hotel and treated every client like they were hosting royalty. You didn't just train them. You indoctrinated them. With a single-page document taped to the inside of every trailer door. We don't rent bathrooms. We deliver respect. We don't sell sanitation. We sell relief. Clean isn't optional. It's the brand. You called it the Toilet Manifesto. It wasn't cute. It was the backbone of your company. Because at scale, consistency is culture. And your culture was built on something America had long forgotten. Dignity at ground level. You opened your second yard in Charleston. Then one in Atlanta. Then a third in Raleigh. Each city had its own rhythms, but the problem was always the same. No one wanted to own the low ground. You did. You didn't try to automate everything. You didn't let software hide the mess. You hired humans, trained humans, paid them well. And every day, they rolled out with trailers in tow, like modern-day cavalry. Because while others were posting thought leadership on LinkedIn, your crew was saving events from becoming disasters. People started to notice. You got profiled in a small business podcast. A regional news piece called you the King of Clean. An operations VP from a national construction firm asked if you'd expand into Texas. And you felt it. That shift. You weren't just running a business anymore. You were building a movement. Not a brand people bought. A standard they started demanding. But it came with pressure. More trailers. More clients. More expectations. The system had to scale, without crumbling. So you built back-end playbooks. Service timelines. Emergency protocols. Cleaning checklists. Brand touchpoints from first inquiry to final invoice. You ran simulations. You mapped cities by water access. You beta-tested scent options and discovered people tip more when trailers smell like citrus. You tracked every number, but never lost the soul. Because you knew. Systems make you efficient, but values make you trusted. One Friday night, a young installer named Malik called you. He was 23. Worked hard. Rarely asked for anything. That day, he'd handled back-to-back installs. Sweaty. Non-stop. But what he wanted to share had nothing to do with logistics. "I installed for a retirement party," he said. "This lady came out and said, 'This is the cleanest bathroom I've used in years.' I felt taken care of." He paused. "I think that's the first time anyone said that about something I built." You didn't say much. Just sat there holding the phone, grinning, because that's when you knew. You weren't building trailers. You were building self-worth. You looked back at how far you'd come. From a single prototype in your driveway, to a multi-city operation with a wait list into next year. From wearing polos in brand meetings, to wearing boots that smelled like bleach and freedom. You used to run decks about how brands made people feel. Now you ran a business that made people feel human. You used to say, authentic, in meetings. Now you actually were. And what was the secret? Not genius. Not luck. Not even timing. Just this. You chose the thing no one wanted. And did it better than anyone thought possible. You didn't chase innovation. You chased neglect. You turned rot into revenue. Shame into service. Stigma into system. Because here's the part they don't teach in business school. The riches aren't in disruption. They're in what's been quietly rotting while everyone looked away. And the people who are brave enough to own it, they win. Every time. Now, when investors call, you listen. Not because you need the money, but because you want to change the narrative. Because when someone says, blue collar, you want them to picture excellence. Clean lines, clean trailers, and a founder who used to scrub toilets at midnight, and now runs a company that people talk about at country clubs. Not out of shock, but out of respect. One last thing. You still ride with the crew once a month. Still spray down toilets. Still test soaps. Still take late calls. Not because you have to. Because you refuse to become the kind of leader who forgets where the magic came from. Because if the brand ever stops smelling like effort, you're done. And because every time you unlock a trailer door before sunrise, you smile. You breathe in the eucalyptus. And you remember. You cleaned your way to freedom. One flush at a time. Then there's Andrea and Dean, a couple who baked their way out of burnout. One cookie box. You always thought adulthood would feel different. More like a destination. Something earned. But here you were, 36, exhausted, sitting in traffic on I-90, trying not to cry over a forgotten lunch. You were Andrea, a logistics manager for a regional warehouse. Your days were color-coded in Outlook. Your nights were grayed out by fatigue. Every hour of your life tracked, measured, and monitored, except the part that mattered. You hadn't had dinner with your husband in 9 weeks. Dean drove for Amazon Flex. Started his shift at 4 a.m., ended it at 2. You started at 9, clocked out at 6. By the time you came home, he was either asleep or staring blankly at a YouTube video he'd forget by morning. You called it the hallway marriage. Always crossing paths. Never standing still. You shared a mortgage. You shared groceries. You shared the same slow-burning panic that maybe this was it. The dream wasn't broken. It was just missing. Every weekday felt like a copy-paste of the last. Check emails. Schedule trucks. Fill gaps. Answer complaints. Track. Forecast. Reconcile. Repeat. Logistics, they called it. But it felt more like looped silence. The weird part. You weren't unhappy. You weren't abused. You were just blank. Bills got paid. Groceries got bought. You even managed a weekend hike once a month. But something inside you was malfunctioning. Quietly. First came the insomnia. Then the stomachaches. Then the diagnosis, stress-induced digestive disorder. Your doctor handed you a pamphlet and said, try reducing gluten. And maybe slow down a little. You laughed. Slow down. There's no pause button in the American workforce. There's performance. And then there's consequences. So instead, you found your own therapy. Late at night. In the kitchen. You started baking. Not cookies for fun. Not cupcakes with sprinkles. You baked out of survival. gluten-free loaves, vegan muffins, gut-friendly ingredients you couldn't pronounce at first. No timers, no spreadsheets, no KPIs, just you, the oven, and silence that didn't need explaining. Dean noticed first. He came home from an early shift and sniffed the air like a cartoon character. "What is that?" he asked. "That smells like childhood and therapy." You handed him a warm scone made from almond flour, chia seeds, and maple syrup. He took one bite and stared at you. "You're telling me this has no butter?" You shrugged. "No gluten either." He didn't believe you. Ate 3 more. Then he did something strange. He took a picture, posted it on Instagram, and wrote, "My wife's baking her way through stress and I'm not complaining. Gluten-free and somehow still magic." 20 likes in an hour. Then a DM. "Can I buy these from her?" You thought it was a joke. But then 2 more messages came in. And then a comment. "No, seriously, how much for a batch of 6? At first, you dismissed it. You weren't trying to start a business. You were trying not to collapse. But the idea crept in, quiet like a seed under concrete. Dean leaned in. "What if you just made 1 batch? Not for the world. Just for that girl from church. See what happens." So you did. You made 6 muffins. Packed them into a paper box with parchment paper and a handwritten note. Dean delivered them himself after his route. Cash in hand. $15. You laughed. It felt like a dare. But the girl messaged you that night. "These are insane. I gave one to my roommate and now she wants a box too." That weekend, you opened a new Google Doc. Called it, "Just in Case, Bakery." You didn't know what to put in it. So you started small. Ingredient costs. Oven capacity. Delivery time. Ideas for names. Not for real. Just, what if? And then you started noticing things. Every time you posted a photo of the baked goods, people engaged. But not just yum or drop the recipe. They asked questions. "Do you do dairy-free? Can I pre-order for my kid's birthday? Will you ever sell out of state?" It felt absurd. You weren't even a real baker. You didn't have a culinary degree. You didn't even own a logo. You had 1 hand mixer and 2 shelves of gut-friendly flour. But somehow, in a world addicted to convenience, people wanted your food, made by your hands. Still, the fear stayed close. What if someone got sick? What if they hated it? What if you said yes and couldn't deliver? Dean saw it in your eyes. So he said something you never forgot. "Maybe it's not about building a business. Maybe it's just about not wasting what's showing up." That hit. Because you'd spent the last decade being responsible, sensible, safe. But what had it earned you? A 6% raise and a standing desk? You started wondering, what if responsibility without risk wasn't actually responsible at all? So you made another batch. 12 boxes this time. Posted a pre-order link in your Instagram bio. No website. No payment gateway. Just Venmo and DMs. They sold out in 3 hours. You didn't sleep that night. Not from fear. From adrenaline. You hadn't felt this alive in years. Not because of the money. You made $180 after subtracting ingredients. But because for once, what you did mattered. To someone. To you. The next week, you made 20 boxes. Dean helped label. You printed your own stickers. He made up a fake company slogan just to make you laugh. "Our cookies are therapist approved." You posted it. It stuck. By week 4, people were tagging you in their stories. #gutbakes became a real hashtag. You weren't ready for any of it. But you were more scared of going back to how things were. At work, you started zoning out during meetings. While others debated warehouse slotting optimization, you doodled muffin shapes in your planner. You weren't trying to check out. You were just finally checking in to something that felt yours. On the surface, nothing changed. You still clocked in. You still smiled. You still answered vendor emails. But under the surface, Something was brewing. And it wasn't just batter. It was hunger. Not for food. For ownership. Not of a business. But of your time. Your energy. Your story. You started running the numbers in your head. 12 boxes at $15 equals $180. 20 boxes equals $300. What would it take to hit $1,000? What if Dean took more of the delivery route? What if you offered pickup windows? The old part of your brain screamed, "You're not ready. You're not a baker. You're just stressed." But the new part whispered, "What if this is what ready looks like?" And somewhere in that tension, between fear and fire, something clicked. You didn't bake because you had a brand. You had a brand because you baked anyway. You didn't plan a launch. You just said yes to what was already working. This wasn't a startup. It was a slow, gentle rebellion. One that smelled like cinnamon and made people smile without asking why. That night, as you loaded your oven for the 5th Saturday in a row, Dean leaned against the fridge and watched you. "Hey," he said. "You realize something?" You raised an eyebrow. He grinned. "The thing that saved your gut might just save our future." You smiled. Because he was right. They didn't know it yet, but Andrea and Dean were standing at the edge of something wild. Not a bakery. Not a business. But a supply chain powered by emotion, not efficiency. They were about to learn the most American secret no MBA ever teaches. When the product is healing, people line up to buy it. And this one didn't start in a spreadsheet. It started in the kitchen. But the recipe, the real recipe, wasn't in the kitchen at all. It was a message from someone you didn't know. She'd seen a story, a repost, something about therapist-approved cookies. She lived one zip code away. She wanted 2 boxes. Dean looked up from his phone. "You in?" Andrea hesitated. There was no pricing strategy. No brand guidelines. Just a kitchen, a whisk, and a growing line of strangers asking to pay for therapy in edible form. She said yes. That weekend, she made 20 boxes. Every cookie hand-measured. Each note handwritten. Dean made deliveries between Amazon shifts, folding the passenger seat down so nothing got smushed. He texted her updates after each stop. Drop 3, smiled. Tip $5. Drop 6, said, "These smell like Trader Joe's if Trader Joe's had a soul." By Sunday night, they were high on sugar dust and momentum. They made $300. But when they crunched the numbers, they lost $86. The almond flour was too expensive. The packaging, eco-friendly craft boxes, cost almost $1.20 each. The delivery mileage added up fast. And worst of all, they weren't charging for time. Andrea looked at the spreadsheet and felt the joy slide sideways. "I don't want this to be one of those ideas that's cute, until it isn't." Dean sat quietly, scrolling. Then he held up his phone. "Okay, don't get mad, but hear me out." It was a video of a guy in a bathrobe reviewing his girlfriend's meal prep with dramatic sound effects. 7 million views. Comments flooded with laughing emojis and order inquiries. "Let's make a video," Dean said. "Just for fun. Husband taste test." Andrea raised an eyebrow. "You want to film me while I bake?" "No," he grinned. "I want to film me being dramatic while eating what you bake." They filmed it on a Tuesday night. Dean sat at the kitchen counter, blindfolded, holding a cookie like it was the Ark of the Covenant. He sniffed. He moaned. He bit slowly, then shouted, "There's no way this doesn't have butter. No way. I'm calling the FDA." Andrea laughed so hard she forgot to be nervous. They posted it with the caption, "My wife's cookies are gluten-free. My reaction is not." 42,000 views. Overnight. By morning, the comments rolled in. "How do I order? Can she ship to NYC? Wait, these are gluten-free? Take my money." Andrea stared at the screen, stunned. Dean, meanwhile, grabbed a dry erase board. "We need a process." They used Google Sheets to track orders. Dean built a basic intake form on Typeform. Andrea created a rough batching schedule based on oven capacity and chill time. They opened a pre-order window for 48 hours. 62 boxes. Gone. Andrea baked for 3 days straight. Dean took PTO to handle deliveries. They cleared $1,020 net after costs. That night, they sat on the kitchen floor, eating broken cookies, grinning like kids who broke into their own dreams. But the wave kept coming. Repeat customers. DMs. Pickup requests. The kitchen turned into a war zone of parchment, mixers, and Google Nest reminders. Andrea stopped measuring by the tablespoon. She went full bakery mode: grams, yields, output per hour. Dean hacked together a scheduling sheet that calculated delivery routes based on zip codes. Week 4, $3,100. Week 6, $5,700. Week 8, $12,080. The growth was addicting. So was the exhaustion. Andrea hit a wall when a customer asked for a custom batch. Gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, no nuts, half the sugar, but still decadent. She tried. It took 3 test runs, 30 wasted cookies, 4 hours of rage baking, and 1 minor meltdown. When the customer picked it up, she smiled and said, "These are almost perfect. Can't wait for next time." Andrea closed the door. Didn't say a word. Dean found her later, staring at an empty mixing bowl like it owed her money. She didn't cry. She said something worse. "I don't know if I can keep doing this." That night, they sat down, no screens, no flour in their hair, and asked the real question. Are we building joy or just replicating pressure? Because this wasn't supposed to be the new version of burnout. It was supposed to be the way out. They took a beat. Reviewed everything they'd learned. Customers didn't want everything. They wanted consistency. The early success didn't come from chaos. It came from repetition, from care, from clarity. Dean pulled out the whiteboard again. Wrote one sentence. "We don't bake to impress. We bake to repeat." Andrea nodded. That was the shift. They cut their menu to 4 items. No custom orders. No exceptions. Andrea optimized each recipe for batch size and cost. Dean refined routes, tightened delivery windows, and created simple automated texts. "Your cookie box is on the way. Smells like Saturday already." They rebranded their pre-order system. Opens every Monday. Closes Wednesday at noon. Pickup or delivery by Friday. Simple. Predictable. Professional. People respected it. Sales stayed strong. Complaints dropped. Andrea baked less, but better. And most importantly, she smiled again. They invested in better packaging, heat-sealed liners, custom stickers. Nothing fancy, but consistent. Dean made a new video every Friday. The tone, cookie snob meets humble husband. Each clip had the same vibe. Same cookie. Same wife. Same obsession. We're not sorry. Some got 5K views. One hit 88K. They never went viral again like that first time. But they didn't need to. They had something stronger than a spike. They had flow. They hit $5,000 per month. Then $8,000. Then $12,000. They weren't rich. But for the first time, their calendar was theirs. They shared breakfast. They watched TV without guilt. They had Thursday night pack and podcast sessions. Boxes, labels, true crime stories on speaker. It wasn't glamorous. It was theirs. Andrea looked around one day at the now organized chaos of their home kitchen. Batching trays. Inventory lists. Cooling racks. And she smiled. Not because it was perfect, but because she knew where everything went. What everything cost. And why every customer came back. It wasn't luck. It was structure. They didn't scale like founders. They scaled like adults with bills and boundaries. No investors. No Shopify explosion. No debt. Just trial, error, and rhythm. Andrea joked one night that they should print their own motto on every box. Cookies for people who think too much. But she crossed it out. Wrote something simpler. Small batch. big breath. Because that's what their product really was. Not sugar. Not novelty. Not even therapy. It was permission. To pause. To slow down. To savor something made by real hands, with real care. They didn't bake to impress. They baked to repeat. And that made all the difference. They didn't know it yet, but the first $12,000 wasn't a finish line. It was a prototype. A working draft. A beta version of their next chapter. Because soon, demand would outpace their fridge. And scaling would require new questions about kitchens, systems, and brand identity. But for now, they had one thing no startup pitch could match. A business that fit inside their life. Instead of one that swallowed it. It wasn't just cookies anymore. It was a system. Simple. Repeatable. Profitable. Andrea didn't dream of opening a storefront. She didn't want a line down the block, or a neon sign that spelled out her name. She wanted breathing room, clean counters, predictable prep. So she made a decision. 4 cookie flavors. That's it. No customs. No substitutions. 2 order windows per week. Orders lock at 72 hours. No refunds. No chaos. Dean called it cookie supply chain optimization. Andrea called it sanity. Customers didn't push back. They respected it. Because when you treat what you do like a real business, people mirror that energy. They outgrew the kitchen faster than expected. The home fridge couldn't hold bulk ingredients. The stove started glitching from overuse. The counter space turned into a war zone of batter and packaging. So they found a shared kitchen 2 miles from home. Clean. Certified. $25 per hour. It felt like walking into someone else's dream at first. Stainless steel. Big ovens. Actual space to breathe. Andrea set up baking hours like sacred appointments. Dean created a schedule that mapped every bake to every batch to every delivery route. They weren't guessing anymore. They were dialing in. Then came the people. Not investors. Not advisors. Helpers. Andrea brought on 2 part-timers. 1 packed. 1 labeled. Nothing fancy, just neighbors who needed flexible income and believed in what they were touching. Dean partnered with 3 local couriers, freelancers with cars and hustle. He ran orientation like a startup founder. Respect the product. Respect the customer. Text every delivery. Smile at the door. It worked. No apps. No contracts. Just Venmo, trust, and spreadsheets that tracked every mile. The cookies left the kitchen warm. They arrived intact, on time, and often with tips. Their system began to hum. Andrea baked on Mondays and Thursdays. Dean oversaw logistics and content. Friday mornings were reels. Quick shots. Clean cuts. Dean's voice in the background saying things like, "My wife made magic again. Try not to cry when you eat the snickerdoodle." Their new tagline, "We don't sell cookies. We deliver pause." That line stuck. People commented, that's exactly how they feel. Because they weren't selling novelty. They were selling breath. Presence. Something soft in a world of hard edges. Month 5 in the shared kitchen. $17,800 revenue. Month 6. $21,200. No ads. No influencer deals. Just structure. Their inbox was full of requests. Will you ship nationwide? Can I buy for my company retreat? Do you offer catering? They said no to most. Because they knew something dangerous happens when small businesses scale without clarity. The soul gets lost. Andrea didn't want to chase bigger. She wanted to chase better. They invested in custom boxes. Branded tissue paper. A sticker that read, "This box contains calm." Customers started tagging them in unboxing videos. Hashtag #CookiePause trended locally. A mom of 2 emailed, "I hide in my car with your cookies for 10 minutes before going inside. Thank you." A therapist bought 5 boxes and told her clients, "Start with something you can hold. Like a cookie made by hand." Dean got quiet reading that one. Andrea did too. Because this was never about cookies. It was about breaking the algorithm of burnout. They hired Rochelle, a retired ops manager, to handle DMs and scheduling. She worked from home, answered every message like a handwritten note, and followed one rule: make people feel like they already belong. That principle scaled faster than any funnel. Customers didn't churn. They returned. Some ordered the same cookie every week for 6 months straight. Not because they forgot what else was out there, but because they'd finally found something predictable in a world that wasn't. Andrea began to trust the rhythm. She wasn't chasing spikes anymore. She wasn't afraid of slow weeks, because everything they built could flex, shrink if needed, expand if wanted. No storefront to maintain. No team too big to pivot. No pressure to explode. They weren't looking to impress VCs. They were feeding real people. In real time. With real ingredients. That was enough. More than enough. And yet, the numbers kept growing. $20,000 per month became their new normal. It paid rent, covered healthcare, built a cushion. They gave raises, took weekends, held each other more often, laughed longer, slept better. One night, Andrea looked across the prep table at Dean, flower on his shirt, label gun in hand, and said, "This feels like freedom." He nodded, because it was. Not the flashy kind. Not yachts or IPOs. Not Time magazine or podcast tours. The quiet kind. A no boss. A no meetings that should have been emails. A no Sunday dread. Just work that fit inside a life they liked, instead of one that consumed it. People asked them when they'd take it to the next level. They smiled, because for them, this was the next level. A business that didn't feel like a trap. A brand that didn't burn them out. A system that served, not swallowed them. They didn't build a company to run faster. They built a rhythm to live better. They didn't escape work. They built work that felt like them. Because wealth wasn't in the new recipe. It was in making the old one better than anyone else. And finally, Kelly, who lost her job, lit a candle, and built a brand that smells like peace. You always thought losing your job would feel louder. Like a scene in a movie, cardboard boxes, tears, maybe a dramatic speech in the HR hallway. But when it happened, it was quiet. A Zoom call. 4 sentences. A vague apology. A bullet point severance. 10 years. Gone. You were Kelly. HR assistant. Calendar master. Office birthday organizer. Keeper of the morale candy jar. No. Unemployed. Unanchored. Unknown. And it wasn't just the job you lost. It was the rhythm. The title. The ability to answer the question, "So what do you do?" without swallowing panic. At first, you made a to-do list. Update resume. Apply to 5 jobs per day. Wake up before 8. No pajamas past 10. It lasted 4 days. By week 2, the emails stopped. The alarms turned off. You drifted inside your own house. You weren't depressed, not officially. You weren't motivated, not convincingly. You were something else. Functionally frozen. You rearranged the living room 3 times. Watched YouTube videos about Scandinavian closets. Lit a candle every night just to feel something fill the room. Lavender. Cedar. Vanilla bean. Anything that didn't smell like failure. One night, your favorite candle burned out mid-movie. You got up to replace it. None left. That annoyed you more than it should have. You didn't need the light. You needed the calm. So you Googled how to make a candle at home. 20 minutes later, you were on Amazon buying soy wax, wicks, and a set of tiny amber jars. Not to start a hobby. Not to launch a business. Just to keep the ritual alive. The first batch was uneven. Too much oil. The wick leaned sideways. The top cracked as it cooled. Still, you lit one. And the scent hit different. Lavender and cedarwood. Same ingredients. Different meaning. Because this one didn't come from Target. It came from your hands. For the first time in weeks, you weren't numbing. You were creating. That night, you slept through the whole night. No melatonin, number 3 a.m. doom scroll. Just the faint scent of something you made, still in the air. You made more. Same formula. Better pour. Cleaner burn. You started giving them away. To friends. To neighbors. To the barista who remembered your name. They said things like, "This smells like peace. Wait, you made this. Can I buy one?" You said no at first. Then, maybe. Then, what if? One friend posted a story holding your candle in her palm. Soft lighting. Cozy blanket. Caption. Self-care in a jar. Thanks at Kelly Candle Shop. You saved my Tuesday. Except you didn't have a shop. You didn't even have a logo. But you had DMs. Asking, "Where can I get this? Are you on Etsy? Do you ship?" You didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear. Because something inside you reignited. The messages weren't about candles. They were about control. About someone wanting something you created. Something small, warm, and intentional. And for the first time since the layoff, you thought, maybe I didn't lose everything. Maybe you just lost what didn't fit anymore. The next morning, you wrote one line in your notes app. If I sold 10 candles a week at $18, that's $180. Not much. But more than zero. More than waiting. More than scrolling job boards that felt like graveyards of broken titles. You kept going. You ordered better jars. Watched tutorials on wick centering and hot throw ratios. Learned the science of curing time. Bought a thermometer. And every night, you poured wax like it meant something. Because it did. You weren't chasing success. You were chasing stillness. And that stillness became a product. You made your first Etsy listing with trembling fingers. Name, Hearth and Hue. Tagline, small batch soy candles for people who overthink everything. Your first product. Number 01. Lavender cedar / calm in a jar. Photos were taken on your windowsill. You used an old flannel as the backdrop. Your cat photobombed 2 of them. You left it in. It felt honest. Your first order came 2 days later. A woman in Oregon. 3 states away. She left a note. Saw a post. Loved the name. Needed something soft today. You cried. In the hallway. With the notification still glowing on your phone. Not because of $18. Because you mattered again. Because you were seen, not as someone applying to belong, but as someone building something worth belonging to. Orders trickled in. Then doubled. You printed shipping labels from your bedroom. Your kitchen turned into a production zone. The hallway, a scent lab. Friends dropped off recycled jars. You made custom stickers on Canva. Your laundry room smelled like a forest in spring. It wasn't perfect, but it was yours. And after months of feeling like furniture in your own life, you were finally the one designing the room. You started calling yourself a candle maker out loud. It felt weird, then real, then obvious. Because it wasn't about wax. It was about becoming someone again. Someone whose time created warmth. Whose stillness lit other people's darkness. You didn't know what came next. You didn't need to. You had work. You had scent. You had fire. You lost your job. But you found your hands. You found your calm. You found your fire. And what Kelly didn't know, what she couldn't yet see, was that the very thing that helped her survive after 8 p.m. would soon help her live by 8 a.m. Because the candle wasn't the end. It was the fuse. The quiet, flickering warning that something was about to begin. You didn't plan to build a product line. You were just trying to stay sane. But orders kept coming. The lavender cedarwood blend hit a nerve, gentle but grounded. People said it helped them breathe differently. So you leaned in. Not with ambition. With precision. You started studying candles like they were chemistry. What was the best wax-to-oil ratio? What wick size burns clean in a 9-ounce jar? What causes sinkholes? Frosting? Tunneling? You found answers on YouTube. Forums. Reddit threads. Candlemaking subcultures full of obsessive tinkerers. They weren't influencers. They were scientists with aprons. And for the first time since college, you felt curious again. You ordered a new thermometer. Measured every ingredient by the gram. Tracked burn times in a spreadsheet. You made test batches at 5 p.m., lit them at 9, and watched them flicker past midnight, studying the flame like a signal from the universe. You weren't crafting anymore. You were engineering. You created 3 official scents. Number 01, lavender cedarwood. Number 02, citrus spice. Number 03, clean linen. Each had its own label. Each had its own mood. You shot photos on your windowsill again. Natural light. iPhone 11. A white sweater and an old mug as props. You didn't have a DSLR. But you had intention. And that was enough. Your Etsy shop went live on a Thursday at 7:42 p.m. You refreshed the screen every hour. On day 2, you got a cha-ching from the app. Your first sale, from someone named Tasha in Utah. She ordered citrus spice. You printed the label. Wrote a handwritten thank you note. Wrapped the jar in recycled paper with a piece of twine. It looked handmade. Because it was. After 10 days, you'd made 11 sales. After 30, 57. You kept a notepad with tally marks by scent. Lavender was still queen. Clean linen was quietly rising. Every time a stranger bought a candle, it felt like being picked for a team you didn't even try out for. But then, the flaws appeared. One customer messaged you. Smells amazing, but the wick tunneled and left a wax ring. Another said, mine wouldn't stay lit. A third left a 3-star review. Love the scent. Jar was greasy on arrival. You froze. Again. The fear came back. What if you were just pretending? What if this was another collapse in slow motion? You paced the kitchen. Then did something different. You didn't quit. You pulled up Google. Typed, how to fix candle tunneling. Watched 4 videos. Took notes. Reformulated. You rewrote every recipe. Adjusted wick sizes. Changed your pour temperature by 10 degrees. Then you started again. You called it Batch 2.0. Cleaner burn. Tighter scent throw. Better glass jars. You heat-gunned every surface to level the top. It took longer. Cost more. But it worked. The next 10 reviews were all 5 stars. One customer wrote, I'm a candle snob. This one gave me goosebumps. You smiled. Not because you were proud, but because you were right to try again. You rebranded, quietly, tossed your Canva logo, made a new one with softer font, richer tone, updated your Etsy banner. Every candle is a calm, in a jar. It wasn't marketing. It was the truth. You switched from generic labels to custom ones. Bought a thermal printer. Printed Hearth and Hue at the top in muted ink, with a little flame beside it. Then you added something unexpected. A reminder on every jar. Burn slow. Stay soft. You're doing fine. People screenshot it. Tagged you. Sent DMs like, I cried reading this. Thank you. This is the reminder I didn't know I needed. You weren't just shipping wax and wick anymore. You were shipping space. You created a ritual. Every Monday and Thursday became pour days. Tuesday was label. Wednesday and Friday were pack and ship. You didn't need a warehouse. You needed sequence. Your dining table was now your staging area. The pantry held glass jars instead of pasta. You lived around your business, but not inside it. Because you weren't hustling. You were honoring. The shop grew. You hit 100 sales. Then 250. Your first Star Seller badge felt like a little trophy no one else could see but you. You started using Etsy's shipping system. Optimized product tags. Took a short class on SEO. Not to hack the algorithm. Just to tell the truth more clearly. Your shop description read, made in small batches. In a small kitchen. For people holding big emotions. That line got you pinned on someone's Pinterest board titled, "Quiet Joy." One customer messaged you after receiving a candle and said, "It smells like the way I want my life to feel." You screenshotted it, printed it out, taped it to your fridge. Not to brag, to remember what you were building. Not a brand, a boundary, a container for care. You weren't just back on your feet. You were grounded, still in the same house, same kitchen, but everything felt oriented. Because you'd stopped asking, "How do I sell more?" and started asking, "How do I serve better?" That changed everything. She didn't sell candles. She sold control in a world on fire. A flame that didn't scream. A scent that didn't beg. A product that simply existed, soft, steady, and true. She was still in the same kitchen. But it wasn't a place of escape anymore. It was a headquarters. It didn't happen all at once. But at some point, Kelly realized she was no longer reacting. She was refining. The chaos was gone. The panic, too. She wasn't chasing growth. She was tuning it. The decision started small. 5 bestsellers. That's it. No more customs. No scent of the month experiments. No one-off, "Can you do a vanilla chai with rosewood twist?" orders. She said no. Kindly. Consistently. And her customers respected her for it. Because structure wasn't limitation. It was a promise. With focus came clarity. She ran a 90-day report. Lavender cedarwood still reigned. Clean linen had overtaken citrus spice. One new blend, amber smoke, was quietly becoming a cult favorite. She updated her listings, archived the lowest performers, and increased prices by 15%. No apologies. The ingredients hadn't changed, but her confidence had. She knew what went into each candle. The hours, the care, the stillness. This wasn't cheap therapy. This was handcrafted relief. And people paid for that, gladly. Shipping, once a constant headache, became clockwork. 2 ship days per week, Tuesday and Friday. Clear cutoffs. Clear expectations. She printed batch notes with each order. This candle was poured on Sunday morning, between coffee and sunrise. "Thank you for letting me work like this." Customers loved it. One wrote back, "This is the only product that feels like it was made with time." Kelly smiled. Because that's exactly what it was. She outsourced smart. Not scale for scale sake, but tools that gave her more presence. She used Printify for custom stickers. Each label now had her brand, scent, and signature burn time affirmation. She built an Airtable sheet to track inventory, pour batches, and fulfillment timelines. She used Orderdesk to integrate Etsy with her shipping tools. Everything ran with rhythm. She didn't need a team of 10. She just needed a system that respected her time. The results followed. Her Etsy shop earned Star Seller 3 months in a row. Then 6. Then became a top 1% seller in the handmade candle category. Each month, 400 to 500 orders. Average order value, $38. Monthly revenue, $14,000 to $16,000. Annual total, just under $180,000. But that wasn't the win. The real win? Her 4.9 star rating. Hundreds of reviews that sounded like love letters. This candle brought peace into a room that hasn't felt calm in years. Second time ordering. Won't be the last. My therapist recommended this shop. Best advice she ever gave. And this one, I'm not sure what she puts in the wax, but it feels like grace. But here's the real secret. Kelly still made candles every week. She still hand-poured. Still wiped jars before packing. Still left notes when she had time. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The candle was no longer a survival tool. It was now a way to stay soft. In a world that kept sharpening itself. She worked fewer hours than ever. Took Mondays off. Spent Thursdays on restocking. No late nights unless she chose them. The business wasn't a runaway train. It was a garden. Tended. pruned, beautiful because of its limits. Friends kept asking, "Why don't you hire? Why not open a store? Why not scale this to the moon?" She always smiled, because that path wasn't hers. Her goal wasn't more. It was enough. Enough income. Enough peace. Enough room to stretch without snapping. She didn't need a warehouse. She needed breathing space. And the courage to protect it. That's what most people don't tell you about small business. It's not always about breakout moments or investor decks. Sometimes it's about quiet consistency. It's about choosing not to chase. About refusing urgency culture. About waking up and knowing exactly how your work fits inside your life. Not the other way around. Kelly didn't build an empire. She built an atmosphere. A scent. A system. A brand that didn't scream, but stayed. Because her candles weren't designed to blow up. They were designed to burn slow. And in that slow burn, she found everything fast growth couldn't give her. Margin. Meaning. Mastery. She didn't need a factory. Just a flame. Because real wealth isn't volume. It's permission. To build quietly and keep it yours.